Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of the Like Attracts Like podcast. If you joined us for our last episode, we got pretty deep into where we set our intentions from with this new year coming up, and we expanded a little bit on the law of hypnotic rhythm, which is just another one of the methods that we are talking about as far as describing how and why we do the things we do, why we perpetuate those things that we don't like in our life, and then how to stop the loop. By popular request, we are going to talk a little bit more in depth about the boxes that make up the specific process of creating your habits, your behaviors, your beliefs, and then the unconscious conditioning that keeps that loop going until we wake up to it and break it. We're going to dive right into the law of hypnotic rhythm when we come back.
Take a look at life from a different perspective. What if life is happening for you and not to you? This is the Like Attracts Like podcast with your host, Pat Mahan.
Hey, you guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me today on the show. If you're a new listener to the show, I want to thank you so much for tuning in for the first time. Welcome. And if you are a repeat listener to the show, you know that I love you guys and I appreciate the fact that you are here with me every single day talking about things that matter to you, things that matter in the world, whether things matter at all, and what to do to decide what things matter for us. Today, we're going to talk about just that. We're going to get a little bit more in depth in regards to the law of hypnotic rhythm. We covered it in yesterday's episode as far as how thoughts subconsciously become the patterns and rituals that we behave through unconsciously, to the point where we believe them so much and through so much evidence shown to us by a reticular activating center, these random neutral thoughts that we energize with emotion become confirmed. Through the process of them being confirmed enough, they become convictions, which means that we are so sure of what these things, these thoughts, these beliefs, these situations and patterns in our life, we are so sure from our own subjective evidence what they mean to us that we are willing to battle and unconsciously fight and defend them. This is going to really, I hope, bring some clarity to a lot of people about how maybe they created certain things in their life, even though they don't believe that they did, or trying to really narrow down the things that they are currently manifesting, and if and why things aren't working for them. We can really shed light specifically on what part of this process the blocks lie in so that you can overcome them with a different narrative and a different belief system by structuring your thoughts and the charge that you give them the exact same way. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. To the best of my ability, I'm going to break this down in segments so that you can see how I believe this works and how breaking it down into segments, into boxes, will allow us to break down what component or what box we are in when we are doing something that we're doing, when we're reflecting on why we did something that we did, or when we are looking to the future to project how we want to manifest or create that result in our lives. And there's a few things that you would have to essentially agree with on a universal consciousness energy scale, but I think it's actually really something that is pretty easy to agree with if you're of the vibration that is listening to content like this to some degree, some way, shape, or form. There is a part of you, if not in its entirety, that believes that we do choose how we want to apply our energy to the thoughts that come in into the situations that present themselves to us. Even if we can't really say how easy that is, or even if there's still a part of our narrative that tells us how difficult it is, and maybe we can do it some of the time, but not all the time, eventually you kind of narrow down and wither the ego self down to understand that it is all the time. It's in every choice. It's in every thought that comes in, and the neutrality of every thought that comes in, no matter how much the grand perception should be as far as whether it should be or could be a negative thought, meaning there are some thoughts that we attract to ourselves or that drift into our awareness based on whatever is happening in front of us or happening in the world that we are watching or attaching to, or whether just globally there's a concept of something happening that is terrible or tragic. It's even easier for the ego to say, well, even that thought, there's no way that I could control my energy with this thought. I mean, this thought is horrible. And even that thought, you get to understand that even that thought, you can make it neutral, allow it to be there, and then put energy in the other direction, because giving negativity to any thought can't possibly make that thought or any result that exists from that thought in the world conceptually better. You can't apply a negative mindset or vibration to an already negative thought or idea and then expect a positive result. So there's certain logical things that most people can wrap their head around that we do choose, especially in our everyday thoughts, our everyday limiting beliefs, our everyday belief structure of why we do the things we do and behave the way that we do. We think that we do all of these things very consciously and very deliberately, but in fact, most of what we do until we really awaken, and even then so, is done on autopilot. You'll know this or become aware of this if you've ever tried to drive a car down a road that you were super sure of. You've been down your hometown road through your roads a million times. There will be times in your life where you will drive home from someone's house. It'll be miles, and you'll get home and you won't remember how you got there. You won't consciously remember that you even focused on the road or the where to turn or how fast to go, but yet you still got home. And then this is a great demonstration of our subconscious running the show while our conscious is drifting, while our thoughts, if you will, quote unquote thoughts, are drifting. Our subconscious that knows how to do the things that it knows how to do will perform those tasks from a place of subconscious awareness. Your consciousness can be disconnected from that and doing something else. The alignment comes from being able to dive into your subconscious and really see what it says and sift and sort through the shit of it to find the positive things, and then in the garbage that you don't want, also be appreciative for them and find the positive perspectives that they were leading towards. So that is a mouthful as far as what to do or look for. But this method, the law of hypnotic rhythm, I first came to know it in a book called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And I had already read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which depending on what frequency or level you find it at, all of them are valuable. You just continue to learn from this book and from him. And he was just incredible based on the content that they were allowing back then, that essentially was using all of the best parts of all religions from the world. It wasn't calling that. It was using the energetic paradigms that most religions talk about in their books and the examples and stories that they give, but he wasn't calling it those things. He wasn't labeling it this person or that thing, but he was using the energy constructs of how we work as conscious humans and describing how to attract things in your life and how to limit the negativity in your life and attract things from a subconscious belief using the power and source of this universe. And it was way, way, way before its time. And even then, a lot of the content was restricted because they were terrified of the backlash. It just goes to show you how much more evolved we are becoming as a society, the direction that we're trending, and the frequency that humans are awakening to now. So this is just a great example of that because the information is still so relevant now, and even more people are waking up to it. So another book that he did, I believe it was actually published a week after Think and Grow Rich, but it was quiet. Nobody really engaged in it for a really long time. So Outwitting the Devil, essentially, I don't know if you've read Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsch, similar dialogue as far as having a conversation or identifying what the, again, air quotes, devil or that side of the equation is or means or represents. Whereas in Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsch is having a conversation with this higher consciousness that they describe as the God consciousness or the overall unified consciousness of infinite information, intelligence, and unconditional love. He essentially has a dialogue with this higher consciousness that provides him answers that are really, really difficult to find a flaw with. And just like an Abraham Hicks or even a Bashar, someone who is channeling higher consciousness, it never contradicts itself. It never says anything other than what it is. And in essence, logically, it's difficult to prove wrong without identifying the ego as the source of what your evidence is. And that is where Outwitting the Devil comes in, because it's essentially the conversations with the self, the ego self, that is limiting or less than, and it identifies how you came up with these beliefs. A negative belief, or the devil in this case, would be any thought that challenges or provides any sense of doubt from the way, or the fact that you are linked to this overall source and consciousness, and that you are unconditional love and perfect and the source of creation and particles that create worlds, that you are that. Any mind-based, because the mind is the ego, any mind-based thought that is in contradiction to that is essentially identified as the devil or Satan or the lower frequency part of this duality. Again, you couldn't have one without the other. other. You can't have God and his magnificence without the devil and his lower negativity. You couldn't do it. So that's the duality of the story. You couldn't have paradise if you didn't know what to compare it to, which is why a lot of people are saying that the stories that we hear had to be this way. That's why they are all the same. There is a heaven on earth. There is a paradise. There is an Eden, but it is living in the unconditional love of the universal God consciousness. And then original sin and hell on earth and lower frequencies is any thought that contradicts through the mind the infinite connection that you have. And those two have to be essentially best friends in this story because they need each other to exist. But when you realize that you have both sides of those forces existing inside of you, you have your connection to God, if you will, or the universe and the source of everything. And it feels amazing when you connect and align with that. And those thoughts that know and believe and confirm that you are that and you act and behave accordingly, that feels amazing. Anything you do to the contrary, if you don't believe that you're the source of everything, if you act out of lack or you respond from a place of thinking you are less than, what that will create and the frequency that exists on is hell on earth. You will live heaven or hell on earth based on your degree of allowing neutral thoughts to consume your energy in a negative way. So your ability to live on earth in heaven or hell here in this reality is only indicative of the thoughts that you charge emotionally as they come into your awareness. As these thoughts arise, you decide whether you charge these thoughts negatively or positively with your energy. And then based on that repetition, you will create then a belief. So again, to break this down even more fluidly to the start of everything, you're a person, you have a conscious awareness. So before there is an attachment to anything, before you say I do anything, you are a person who is consciously aware. So again, if you had amnesia and you weren't aware of any labels, you didn't have a label to anything, you would just be taking things in the moment. You would be just this conscious observer with no name, no identity at all, but you would still be able to observe even though you couldn't attach a label to any of the things that you were observing. So that's where this starts. You are that observer, and imagine you are looking out of the eye holes of the body that you are inside of and operating and moving around from this blank slate of conscious awareness, looking at things, but you haven't been taught what they were yet. There's no identification, there's no meaning, there's no label. You haven't attached anything to anything, positive or negative. We do that through experiences. We do that through incoming thoughts. So the first part of this is we're going to identify and separate incoming thoughts from outgoing thoughts. An incoming thought is any thought that has either been projected towards you from another, whether you've seen it in the movies, whether you've seen it on television, whether you watched it or witnessed it in an actual scenario in real 3D life in your family, in your friends, or at school. These are all just situations, and if you didn't have a past attachment to anything at all, you would all be viewing these situations as they came to you from a zero-based, non-judgmental perspective with nothing, no frame of reference to put any value on anything positive or negative. As we go through each stage of our life, moment by moment, things happen, and if they happen longer over time or progressively, that will develop a pattern or loop in that direction. So if you are treated poorly by your family over and over and over, when you get to school with even new people in a new environment, you might have the subconscious belief that you deserve to be treated poorly because over time of thoughts coming in from other people with no conscious separation, you just agree with them and agree with them and agree with them. And as you agree with them, because that's your evidence over time, that's your life that you've lived subjectively, then the more times you charge them energetically, that will create a belief system. The belief system will send a message to your reticular activating system, which is the part of the brain that looks for things. I use this example a lot. When you are playing the punch buggy game on a long road trip, before you play the game, you don't see any. There's no reference consciously or care at all. If you see one, you might have seen a million of them, but there's no reference consciously. There's no check mark saying that you did. The second you decide to consciously play this game, you have told yourself that I want to look for these cars. You know what they are. You know what they look like. I want to look for punch buggies, so help me out. And even if you consciously are looking around, you very seldom see them consciously. But out of the corner of your eye, when you're not looking, listening to the radio, doing this, watching that, you see one and you're like, that's one. But you only saw the corner of the back end of the rear fender. You had no idea because your brain knew knew what to look for without you. How did it know? Because you told it what to look for. And then over time of seeing all the things that you are telling it to look for, unconsciously, for the most part, we see enough that it confirms it as a reality for us. And with enough confirmation, it becomes a conviction. And we all know that if somebody has a conviction about something, whether we perceive it to be right or wrong, you cannot talk them out of it. That's what the word means. You're convicted. They have such conviction. Good luck talking them out of that. It's more than just, well, this is what they believe. Give it a shot. Or even they see it all the time, so it's going to be hard with the evidence that they see to talk them out of it. This, over time, of charging thoughts with energy and then looking for them over time, programming ourselves to look for them unconsciously. We then see it through the law of attraction and the reticular activating system. We see it in the world, which unconsciously provides this confirming mechanism like, yep, see, there it is. So you wake up and you're like, today is going to absolutely suck. Today is definitely going to suck. So you're even consciously saying it. Then definitely subconsciously you're looking for it. And then every single moment, your brain, just like looking for the punch buggies, your brain is looking for things to confirm what you told it believes. You told your brain that you believe today is going to suck. You told your brain that there is a good likelihood and that you want to see punch buggies in your punch buggy game. So just like your mind is looking for the punch buggies unconsciously because you told it to, it is also looking for things to confirm the fact that you woke up and said today was going to be shitty. It works the same way. It's just that in one sense, we can't imagine that we think we're telling our brain to look for it as though it's something we want. We're saying it because we're woe is meing it. Unfortunately, that is very big in the victim mentality mindset that I adopted for a good portion of my life. I needed to see bad things. I needed confirmation because I wasn't excelling. I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I wasn't living my dreams. I wasn't living my passion. And the reason I wasn't was the excuse I was using was because so many people told me it was bullshit and that I couldn't and that I had to get a real job and that I had to do this and I had to do that and this doesn't make sense for you. You can't do that. No one does that. So I lived that hardcore and let myself essentially settle for less than what my higher self wanted me to do. And I was miserable every day because of it. So instead of accepting responsibility for the fact that I wasn't living out my dream, I made the world seem a lot harder than it actually was to justify to myself why I was slacking and settling and believing this bullshit lie. And it was so real to me that I didn't understand what was happening, but I knew that every day I was like, today's gonna suck, knowing full well that it might not, and that I had a lot of great days. I almost didn't want great days in my life because it didn't match my story of everything sucks, to the point where even if I had a good day and somebody was like, how was your day? I wouldn't be able to out loud tell them that it was a good day because everyone knew me as in this place of unhappy all the time and sad and woe is me and the poor kid that blah, 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 blah. So it was out of character for me if somebody was like, hey, did you have a good day? Even if I did have an amazing day, it was out of character for me to be like, yeah, it was absolutely amazing. And then for me to have to justify, well, why today? What was amazing about today? And then the conversation that would happen with everybody to try to get me out of my bad day. It was just me charging thoughts energetically, negatively, telling my brain to look for it. And then every time I would see evidence of it, being like, see, it does suck. Look at that happened. Look at that happened. And I think that's how a lot of us go through life, unconsciously programmed to look for things that are going wrong, whether it's our story currently or one that we built ourselves, or whether it was somebody else spewing or projecting their negativity onto us. At some point, we heard enough shit that we agreed with it. And in order for a belief to be energetically charged either way, you have to agree with it. In order for a thought to be energetically charged either way, you have to agree with it. And we unconsciously agree to a lot of things that our higher self knows is not correct. When we agree to something that tells us we're less than, or that we're limited, or that we can't do something, or that we have to treat someone a certain way because we need to level the playing field, or because we need this or we need that. When we do that from a place of lack and negativity, that is doubt and disbelief that you are this unconditional thing that absolutely does not have to do that. And the GPS system lets you know that this is a thought that disagrees with your higher self by making you feel bad. That's it. That's the simplest way. We put a lot of energy and emotion into the realness of it and the situation, but this person and the significance of it, and we attach all this pain and heartache to it. But in reality, beyond the pain and heartache is the lesson behind why we made the decision from a place of lack. The lesson always lies underneath the pain once we can detach the significance of what happened and the level or degree that we believe we should feel something from an event. Underneath that lies the reason you made the decision, which was in disbelief to the fact that you are unconditional love and this perfect soul here on earth, this being, spiritual being here on earth, here to live out your dreams and create and manifest from a place of inspiration so you could inspire other people to do the same thing. Any decision that is made or any thought that is agreed with that is in contrast to that is a lower frequency thought than the unconditional love that you are. And any of those gaps or differences are going to be resonated inside of you through frequency. And the lower the frequency that is, meaning the farther away you are from the source, the decisions that you make, the worse it's going to feel because it's going to be lower frequency. So at the higher end of the spectrum, you believe and identify with more of the positive thoughts that say that everyone is the same, that we all deserve amazing things, that like attracts like, and we create our lives and manifest them deliberately, that it is done onto you as you believe, and there's no other law from any other religious or spiritual book that could be any more accurate than that, and it applies perfectly to what we're talking about. It is done onto you as you believe, and in every case and in every scenario, energetically, frequency-wise, vibrationally, we can all make this make sense to the scale and how we believe life is going to affect us and what we are worth inside of it and how things should be. We live out the reality of how we believe things should be in all of the different components of our life. And we do this by unconsciously at first, the law of hypnotic rhythm. We do this by the thoughts that come in, the incoming thoughts. Before they can go and become outcoming thoughts, we must agree with them. The conscious observer, you, the actual you behind the wheel, you must agree with the thought. And unconsciously we'll agree if we've had enough evidence of it in our life at first. If our family was one way, then we're going to most likely agree that families are this way, or that this is reality, or this is tough, or this is hard. We're going to do that from a place of allowing enough neutral thoughts to come in this perceived negative environment that we put enough energy behind it and it became our identity. That became our belief. And then we start to search for our beliefs. Then we confirm them because they're drawn onto us as we believe. And then with enough of that, you'll create a conviction that will fight for your limitations to anyone and everything. And it becomes more difficult to break those bad habits. So knowing this process right here, knowing that thoughts come in, they are projected at us, or they are uprising from our subconscious, and then we, the observer, choose whether we are going to energetically attach an emotion to the thought. This happens whether or not you agree with the thought. So if you have a red shirt on and someone comes up and says that they hate your black shirt, you may not let that affect you because you don't agree with what they're saying because you have on a different color shirt. So there is an agreement process that has to happen. If you had on a black shirt and you kind of felt subconscious about the fact that you had a black shirt on, or you were told that you don't look great in black before and you're going to wear it anyway, because you kind of like it, but you're not sure. And then you go out and somebody comes up and tells you look horrible in your black shirt. Now it has affected you because there's a part of you that agrees with it. You've given your energy to the portion that you agree with. This is why starting from yourself and then going outwardly and projecting love from inside out is so important, because it's less volatile. You don't need to agree with other people based on their opinions of anything, because you have formed your own opinion. And through that self-love, unconditional love, and projection of that love, you are not susceptible at all to anyone else's opinion of their lack or their projections. You won't agree with those because you are conscious now and you are awakened and you understand that you do get to choose. So before it becomes an outgoing thought, you must agree with it and then emotionally charge it. And then enough of that will begin the belief process. You will create a belief out of the repetition of a thought energized with an emotion. That will create your belief, and you will start to behave to that belief. And then because the brain works the way it does, again, you will look for evidence of it. Of course, you will find it, confirm that conviction, and then continue to live your life. In order to make changes, you have to head it off at the past and be present and aware, identify the fact that your thoughts are neutral coming in, and you can decide going backwards from the thought to the emotion if you want that negative emotion to still apply, if that was your thought or whether it was projected at you, whether you still agree with these things that are limiting you. You'll be able to go from this step-by-step process that we talked about today. You'll be able to go backwards from the thought to the emotion, question the belief. This process alone will lessen what the reticular activating activating center is looking for as far as negativity goes. You'll change that to start looking for positive things because you know and understand and believe that you can choose to look for positive things and they are equally as out there as the negative things. This will recreate the conviction and you will begin to absolutely, unquestionably stand for, project, and resonate the frequency of your higher self and your best version. And that is what I wish for each and every one of you. We covered so much awesome stuff here today, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to stick with me to the end of the episode. If you have made it to the end of the episode with all the content that we covered and the in-depth structure of thought processes, charging them, and the way that we create our belief systems, you are onto some amazing things in your life, and you should be very, very excited about the potential that you now hold to be able to understand things that allow you to take control of energizing your thoughts the way you choose, and then the reality that that creates. It is the key to living in the higher frequencies, the higher vibrations, the Eden resonance of human beings at a higher state of consciousness and what that can create here on Earth. And you are less likely to fall prey to the lower frequency thoughts, no matter how much evidence you have of them during the momentum portion of shifting your life to a higher frequency. As you go from lower frequency unconscious living to deliberate creation, higher frequency creation, there is a middle ground. And this process that we just discussed today about charging thoughts from a neutral place instead of an unconscious negative place and building and perpetuating those beliefs, that is your freedom to begin to live a higher conscious, happier, more deliberate life that is less volatile, more fulfilling, and more inspirational to you and anyone around you. And again, there is no scenario where any person, place, or thing can benefit from you not being your best self. So with that, I hope you guys have an amazing day. I hope you have a wonderful night. And until next time, I'll see you then.